Hello, hello, hello. Can we have a big old bent chamber good morning? Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Outstanding, thank you. Thank you all for being here. This is the first time that we've had this kind of format where this is actually, we have the city and the county and the school district and the Parks and Rec together. Typically these are all done separately. We would have 4 separate meetings, but we decided to combine them all together. And I want to thank chamber staff. So Jamie Crispin, the chamber staff, would you please give them a round of applause for coming up with this brilliant idea. I'm very blessed to have some wonderful people to work with. It is now my pleasure to introduce one of the host introductions, and with that I want to thank U.S. Bank. They are the title sponsor for this event. So let's give U.S. Bank a round of applause. And will you help me welcome up Corey Orton. Corey, come on up.
Thank you, good morning. I appreciate, wow, we have a lot of people here. Appreciate you coming out this morning on your way to work. We have an amazing panel this morning, and thank you, Jamie, for getting everybody organized. Actually, Jamie's gonna be our moderator, and go ahead and welcome Jamie up here.
You're cracking me up. That was great, Corey. Thank you again to U.S. Bank for all your help. Absolutely. Well, welcome everybody to your first ever State of the Community Address. How about that, right? This is awesome. But it's up to you to participate for sure. We're going to do our best to get around to everybody in the room, but I want you to take note both of your agenda in front of you as well as the index cards on the table, because if you leave here today and your question was not answered, please state the entity, i.e. the stakeholder whom you want to address on the card, and write your question down and an email or a name, and we'll get that to the entity and allow you a follow-up. Does that make sense? Does that work for you? Yeah? Isn't that what we want, is to communicate here together and find out what our priorities are? So as you know, this is not your ordinary State of the City or State of the County address. And we're very excited not only to have everybody together, but the opportunity to pull us all back at a 30,000-foot level and take a look at how all these various issues and opportunities affect us. And can we plan together as a community? Can we strategize? Can we take a look at how our voice gets the biggest and the best, and we put ourselves together to make the most impact? This is an opportunity to do that. If this format does or does not work for you today, let us know. We're going to work on this. This is a key component of what we're doing together. When the Ben Chamber actively recruited me for the government affairs position and the leadership Ben position, hey, any alumni in the room? Got to do that. Yeah, alumni. That's been so inspirational to see local emerging leaders. But when they recruited me for this, I said, okay, but I got to put my regional hat on. Got to be able to take a look here at how this matters to all of us and pull back. And Tim has been completely supportive of that, as has been the board. And if you haven't had an opportunity yet to read Tim's article called A Cautionary Tale in the newly freshened journal. Where's that journal? This puppy is fresh. If you have not checked it out yet, you can get it online or go check it. It is about the composite of a potential taxpayer revolt, which sounds extreme, but he'll bring it up later, and maybe some of you have heard of it. But we've got to pay attention to what we're doing. So the 3 areas that are being handled today by these entities are, how are they together managing your taxes, how are they managing growth, and how are they handling key community concerns and issues. OSU Cascades, Mirror Pond, affordable housing, maybe something else you have out here on the table to bring up. And I also want to recognize that there are other stakeholders in the room who are a part of the community address, from EDCO to Ben 2030 to the Sheriff's Department to the library to 911, and the list goes on. So please, as you look around in the room, know that it's not only these 4 entities helping address the community, it's all of those folks as well as all of you. So with that in mind, I would also like to welcome up here to join me in moderating my friend, and really appreciate his partnership, from NLink Paradigm, many of you know him, David Blair. We get the distinct.
Hello.
Hello, hello. So at this time, we'd also like to welcome the amazing folks who have taken the time to put together this roundtable and this discussion. From the City of Bend, City Manager Eric King and Mayor Jim Clinton, please welcome. From Deschutes County, Administrator Tom Anderson and Commissioner Tammy Beatty. From the Bend LaPine School District, Superintendent Ron Wilkinson. Right on the last day of school to boot. My goodness, bow to that man. And of course, from our own Parks and Rec District Executive Director, Don Horton. So something unique is about to take place. So, you know, typically, these are about the only PowerPoints you're going to see today. Anybody breathe a sigh of relief about that? No more, right? The brainchild of a combination of ideas came together. And right now, taking a look at the 2013 successes and challenges that have happened for these 4 entities. By the way, these 4 entities hold 90% of your tax dollars as stakeholders, and they're very aware of that. But what they're going to do is give you a look virtually in a video tour of the year that they have had. So take a look.
Rowan County government is basically a full array of services for people who live in the unincorporated county, everything you would expect at a municipal government to do. Within the cities, we also provide a range of public safety services such as jail, parole and probation, district attorney, and so forth.
We represent the same citizens that live within the cities, but we provide a number of services that are not within a city. Health, mental health services, we have the Fair and Expo Center, we have the landfill which takes your trash, and every year you get a gift from us, and that's your property tax bill.
Successful last year, we spent a great deal of time talking about economic development and invested a great deal more money with economic development for Central Oregon in terms of business recruitment.
A couple of successes from this year would be the increase in the transient lodging tax. That allows us to do more marketing, which brings in large events to the Central Oregon area. The second would be the jail expansion. We've been able to do that without raising taxes, adds capacity for our public safety system, and that marries up great with some of the alternatives to incarceration that we're doing.
A couple of successes in our 911 operations this year. We were able to pass a continuation of our temporary operating levy last year. We also worked very closely with the executive board, all the police and fire chiefs in the county, to be able to restructure the way that board operates.
Another success story this year would be the expansion of the airport, allowing for the new flight to LA.
A big challenge in the coming year for the county is working with our police and fire departments on a new emergency communication system that's greatly needed in our county. And related to that is planning work, emergency and disaster planning, working with those same agencies and other hospitals, public works departments, and so forth to be the best prepared we can to respond to whatever disaster strikes Central Oregon.
Challenges and opportunities for this year will be continuing to partner with OSU and the Cascades to bring your 4-year university, as well as working with our communities to continue to keep them protected from catastrophic wildfire through Project Wildfire and fire-free programs.
State of the county is very good. It's an organization filled with skilled and dedicated employees that are ready to solve whatever problems come their way. And it's an organization that has a solid plan for the future with a range of objectives aimed at meet the needs of not only City of Bend residents, but countywide.
I would describe the state of the county as responsive to the needs of the community, healthy and growing at the same time.
Bend LaPine Schools is here to provide a world-class education to the 17,000 students that we have the privilege of serving. It's there to create thriving citizens in our community.
The way that we achieve that is through providing a well-rounded curriculum with science, sports, arts, music.
I believe the greatest achievement for Bend LaPine Schools is the continual academic improvement and continual increase in student achievement.
A great success of Bend LaPine Schools is how much we've increased rigor for our students. Our students are now taking AP, IB, and dual credit classes at 10 times the rate they were in 2001.
Another one of the measures, I think, of our achievement is the fact that our schools are ranked extremely high in our state. 92% of our schools received either a 4 or 5 rating on Oregon's new report card.
Another great success for the district has been that we've been able to maintain a lot of programs through the recession, and we're proud that we've been able to do that even through the tough times. We've been committed to offering those to our students.
Many of our staff members are recognized every year, both locally, regionally, statewide, and nationally, but we're really proud of H.D. Waddell, the principal at Bay Senior High School, who was named Oregon High School Principal of the Year for 2014.
The success we're most passionate about is our digital conversion. We've been able to have 8 schools have one-to-one devices this year. We will add 10 more next year. We also are most passionate about the fact that we're able to keep it about learning and rigorous curriculum and not the technology.
I think when you talk of challenges that we face as schools, the first one that is always an opportunity and a challenge in Ben Lapine is managing for growth and continuing creating the opportunities, the educational spaces for our teachers and students. Another challenge is constantly in terms of being able to have the funding to give us the adequate staffing to provide the class sizes that our teachers and students deserve.
85% of our budget goes towards staffing, and we all want to keep teachers in the classrooms, and that has been our biggest struggle and continues to be our biggest struggle. We really need to get statewide funding for education fixed.
When you talk about the state of Ben Lapine schools, we've been on a steady, continuous improvement cycle, and I'm very proud of our staff and students for the achievements they do.
The goal of Ben Park and Recreation District is to provide opportunities and places for people to recreate in our community. And we do this by providing 85 parks, 65 miles of trails, and over 700 recreation programs.
The Park District's role is to listen to the community and understand what those needs and desires are, and then to put together a plan to deliver those projects and those amenities in a sustainable manner.
Two of the greatest success stories last year, aside from the many projects that we're doing, is we are offering a new Park Steward program, and that will be an opportunity for us to work with the Ben Police Department and provide some of our own staff so that we can have a presence in parks when people are using our facilities.
Bringing the bond projects off the drawing board and out of from the visioning process into reality for the Simpson Pavilion Rec Center, the Colorado Dam Safe Passage, the Deschutes River Trail, Riley Ranch. Those are all big projects that the district has worked hard in the last year to bring.
Another success story that we have done over the past years, we've worked with a group of seniors to master plan the expansion of the Ben Senior Center, and we're also providing a much broader selection of programs for seniors to enjoy in our community.
We just finished construction of the skate park over at Ponderosa Park. That was in partnership with PUSH, a local group of skaters.
We're also working with the Deschutes Children's Forest to provide outdoor environmental education opportunities for youth in our community. And I think the big success about this is that we're working with several agencies throughout our community in order to provide those programs to kids.
One of the significant challenges we're facing is bringing all these projects out of the ground and into construction simultaneously, as well as maintaining and looking after the day-to-day things that we do.
One of the biggest challenges that we have is the rising cost of land and construction costs. We have a whole host of projects. We have several land acquisitions that we're working on, and doing that in the light of rising cost is becoming challenging for us to be able to meet the needs and expectations of our community.
The state of the Park District right now is one of really a lot of excitement, a lot of energy, and one that we're really excited about delivering the projects and the amenities that the community has told us that they want us to deliver.
I think the state of the district today is dynamic. We have a lot of programs going on. We have heavy use in our parks. Our recreation programs are full, and we have a dedicated staff and board that are focused on carrying this organization forward.
There are 3 basic services the city provides: public safety, economic and community development, and infrastructure. So that means police, fire, water, roads, sewer, as well as entitling land for the economic use and benefit for our residents and businesses.
The City Council provides that crucial link to the community, establishes budget priorities, establishes the goals for the city as we continue to grow and prosper.
Our property tax rate is the lowest for a city of our size, and in fact is the lowest in Deschutes County, at about 20% of your total property tax bill going towards city services.
We have passed a fire levy that will significantly reduce response times for the fire department.
This is going to improve just the overall safety in the community and comply with council goals about creating more sustainable funding for our vital public safety services. Really, infrastructure, one of our core services, is really happening in all forms throughout the city. We had our voter-approved general obligation bond a few years ago. A signature project was the reconstruction of Green Market, which is well underway right now. Another success is on the sewer front, where we are expanding our wastewater treatment plant. It's providing for additional capacity to allow for growth in the community. And we also have a citizen advisory committee that's helping us select short-term solutions for sewer to provide immediate relief and economic development. Challenges for the city of Bend really are about managing growth right now. We've got a key element, our urban growth boundary expansion, which is more than just a line on a map. It's about how we use our land efficiently inside the current urban growth boundary.
So part of the role of the city council is to balance the priorities that we hear from the citizens. We are a community where a large number of citizens are involved in pretty much every issue that comes before us.
We are extremely fortunate to have an expanded four-year university in Bend with OSU Cascades. We are working at the city to provide the right connection to issues like affordable housing, transportation, use of public transit into the whole planning effort of OSU Cascades.
We have every reason to be optimistic about the state of the city now and in the future. Public safety is improving, our infrastructure is getting renewed, our streets are getting better, and we've done a number of projects that will make a real positive difference in the lives of our citizens.
So after being here about 7 years, it's nice to be leading the organization into an upward trend of really managing growth. The challenge for us is just reconciling the community values around growth. And so I'm just really excited to be at the helms and come up with a great community here in Bend.
What do you think of that, right? They did a great job. Thank you. Another round of applause to Scott Nelson and the City of Bend for helping us put that together. A lot more fun than just PowerPoints with graphs on it, right? So just a quick reminder that those of you who are into social media, you can use the hashtag BendChamber, and you can be tweeting, you can check it out on Facebook. Courtney's over here actively taking hand, and you can send out your own thoughts and questions as well. So to each one of you, to get us started, you know, you all shared wonderful successes, but you also shared some challenges. And that being said, when you take a look at those challenges, how can we as a community turn those into opportunities? What do we need to do about those challenges, and how can you work together on these challenges, especially as it relates to those three areas of managing the taxes, the growth that you bring up, Eric, and of course, what are some key community issues that we need to turn into opportunities? How are we going to do this together? What do you have on your mind?
Well, I can start. Is this on?
It should be on.
Yeah. You can hear it? Okay. You know, I think the opportunity for the city, as alluded to in the video, is urban growth boundary. And I think part of the challenge is just the name. Urban growth boundary sounds mechanical, bureaucratic.
Yeah, let's hold tight, because that's distracting. Do we have Randy come in to work on that real quick, please? Okay.
So I was saying, let me
You
turn
don't
this
have to
on.
hold that very close at all.
So I was saying that urban growth boundaries is a huge opportunity, I think, for this community to reconcile those conflicting values around growth. I think that's been the challenge in Bend. I know I've been saying that a lot of what do we want to be when we grow up. There was an effort a couple of years ago about a vision, a 20-year vision for Bend. I think we need to figure out a way, a common ground, to be able to lead that effort, to not be, there's these flash points that become words of conflict, like density or market choice or things like that. We have to get beyond that sort of rhetoric and focus on, you know, some real life vision of what Bend should look like, and that really comes in the form of visuals.
so people can see what their community could look like, and that's something that we're taking very seriously through this remend effort. So we're using that urban growth boundary. It's much more than just, again, that line on the map. It's about what does Bend want to be when it grows up.
How about kicking it out to
Yeah, but I'd love to hear other perspectives on this. So.
Is yours on? Can we see if yours is on first?
Oh, yeah, I thought it was me. Okay.
Just talk.
Should we see if mine works? Well,
Yeah.
it's on. There, Kenny. Is that, it's a little tinny. Okay, great. Okay, the feedback.
It's okay.
Okay,
We'll
no worries.
resist.
We're trying to, you hear that voice in my head. Only talking here, which is good. I would start with, yes, growth, and I think what people can do is get involved. And I was really disheartened with the lack of turnout for the recent vote. And I think just the ability for people to get engaged in your community and actually use that incredible opportunity first and foremost. But as we manage growth, a couple of things that are really important is we have a lack of public transportation. And as we're starting to look at how great it is to bring in large businesses and how wonderful it is for us to expand, we have an issue between the communities and regionalizing our ability to bring people together and have an opportunity for them to work within one community and another. And I would be remiss if I didn't underscore the fact that we have a lack of affordable housing. And I know that's being worked on a lot of venues, but quite frankly, we will only be as great as our success as we take care of those people that are coming. So as we're looking at bringing in large lot industrial land, and we're looking at really engaging communities, and in economic development, we're looking at bringing people here. At the same time, I believe we have a responsibility to be looking at what does transportation look like in between the communities and within the city of Bend, and then also what does that look like for affordable housing and workforce housing, so people can actually come here, live, stay here, raise their children, and etc. So those are two big pieces that I think people getting engaged and talking about, that, hey, we do have a lack of affordable housing, we do have a lack of public transportation opportunities, and those are things that I need personally the community to get engaged in.
And we do completely. Ron, you look like you're ready to go.
You bet. No, just following up on what Amy and Eric are talking about, growth is obviously a major part of our life as well. And I think you start from the standpoint that in our community, growth is certainly a challenge, but it's also, as I said on the video, it's an opportunity that we face. And it's certainly, from a school standpoint, a much healthier and thriving situation to be in a growth mode than when you're in closing schools and all those kind of challenges that some communities in our state are facing. And so we look at it as our opportunity, but it does definitely require our four agencies to work closely together, because we need to be partners in figuring out where the growth projections are, what that's going to happen for us. And in Don's case, he can speak for himself, but I know we're constantly trying to stay just a half step ahead in terms of locating sites that are just on the edge where that growth is going to occur, so that we're prepared to move forward when those opportunities come along. I think growth has allowed us to be more efficient in a lot of things, and in some respects, actually we did a regional thing a few years ago in terms of studying for economies between the districts, and actually in the analysis, Bend-Lapine became the benchmark, and the real question was, could you do other things in the region for efficiencies that match the level of what it costs to do that same thing in Bend-Lapine. So I think that it's plus, and it's one of the challenges.
I think for us, one of the ways in which we handle some of the rising costs is through some of the partnerships that we've been able to develop in the community. And part of it, we have great partnerships amongst ourselves up here. We need to make sure that we preserve those and build upon them. But we also have great partnerships with the community. As an example, we have volunteers that volunteer over 60,000 hours of service to us. And to us, that means about 30 full-time employees or $1 million that comes from volunteers in this community. There's also a lot of great partnerships with the development community that we've been able to create to help bring parks online quicker and at a lower cost than what we may be able to provide those. So continuing to look for those opportunities out there can really save the taxpayers a lot of money while we're providing a high level of service.
You know, let's hang with this urban growth issue just for one more minute. There's kids of an age now whose entire natural lives haven't been involved with an urban growth boundary process. And the urban growth boundary decision is supposed to be an occasional decision. It's not supposed to be a process that goes for, you know. So Eric and Jim, maybe you could just start off, but first question is, you know, and I think we should also touch on the affordable housing, if there's anything in the support in the UGB conversation that can affect the affordable housing problem. I'm interested in that. But in terms of going to the legislature next year, what kinds of things will you all be asking for in terms of maybe state policy that would help us make these decisions in a somewhat more discreet way?
Well, for me, you can think of the urban growth boundary expansion as sort of a mechanical thing. Let's draw a bigger line on the map. That's one way to think about it. And by the way, I've been involved somewhat in sort of this email chain from people actually around the world talking about Bend and talking about urban growth boundaries. And it's really fun debate, should we have urban growth boundaries or not? And this guy from Wellington, New Zealand is really bummed out about how crappy things are getting in Wellington and really shouldn't have a growth boundary at all and so on. These are all fun conversations, but really for me it's about this, and Eric's main point I think is that we have this opportunity to really get serious about what kind of city we want to be. And the urban growth boundary process, as painful and lengthy as it is sort of a wake-up call to think about what kind of city we actually want to be. And I get these emails, boy, you need to be more like Durango, or you need to be more like Truckee or Reno, because they have this and this and this, and you don't. And of course, I'm totally happy with those people going to those places. And that's a freedom that we have in this country. So the trick for us is to not look at other cities as some kind of model, because there aren't any. We are a unique place. We like to think of our people here as being here because it's unique, among other reasons. And it's really up to us, people in this room, people out in the community, to decide what kind of a city we want to be. And the urban growth boundary expansion is where sort of the rubber meets the road on that. Do we want a compact city? Do we want a more sprawling city? Do we want to increase density? And David mentioned the affordable housing problem. That's absolutely crucial. We have the backdrop of sort of rising income inequality in this country, and we really have to bring up everybody in our city. And sort of half-jokingly, I propose that we establish a gross municipal happiness index as sort of a guide to trying to not only make some of us happy, but to try to see if we can figure out ways to make all of us happier, and that starts with housing and having a good job.
The only other thing I'd add is the process. The state, it's a state-driven, really has become institutionalized under Senate Bill 100 back in the 70s. It has grown out of hand, and it doesn't work, frankly. You'll have cities that have been through this. It takes 17 years to get approved UGB. Bend is not alone. This is very common throughout the state. So it definitely needs some legislative attention. I think for Bend to go right now and say, we want to skip the process and we just like the state to approve a UGB, that's not realistic. That's not fair. We need to go through the process. We've gotten a prescription from the state that says this is how you expand. It's an order, a remand order of 100 and some pages that lays out. We need to follow that. However, if we get to the end of that process in 2016 is when we are anticipating local adoption of that urban growth boundary. If we get there and we can't pass go, we are going to be pursuing a legislative fix, because I think that's where we're out of. I think the tolerance for more process is gone. That's my opinion. I mean, that's my personal opinion. We'll see where council is at, and others might have different opinions, but that's where I think.
Just a couple comments, since I grew up in the Willamette Valley at the time when Senator McPherson introduced Senate Bill 100 and passed the land use laws in Oregon, started down that trend. The real focus at that time was the absolute encroachment on farmland in the Willamette Valley. And that was really what they were trying to do, is say, okay, we've got to plan our cities differently so that we don't wipe out the Willamette Valley farmland. And we now have applied that across the state. This absolute one-size-fits-all doesn't take into account lava flows through middles of cities and things like that that may require a little difference in density and so on, nor are actually the community values that maybe you're looking for some slightly different things. And I'm not sure this is the stage where we're supposed to go up on our political platform or whatever, but I would say it's more Eric and Jim that it's really time that our state look at whether we've lost sight of what the original intent was and are trying to apply something in a way that doesn't make sense.
Jump in there. I think that the state is under a lot of pressure right now, meaning the Department of Land Conservation and Development, to better work with cities to make the process work. As Eric mentioned, and as most of you know, there's been several cities that have gone to a legislative fix to get their UGB expanded, and I think that's reflective of the difficulty that they've had in meeting all the various criteria under the existing rules to be successful. So they've basically done an end run. And I think no one at the state likes that. You know, they would obviously prefer that the process work. They've had a task force for several years that Nick Lelak, our community development director, has served on to try and, you know, as best they can at sort of the task force level, suggest improvements that may create some safe harbors or some shortcuts, just in terms of process, not in terms of the intent of the UGB expansion rules. But again, I think the state is looking to make this work within the rules more than they have been in the past, given the legislative fixes. So I'm hopeful that at least, you know, the next year or so, as Ben works through theirs, that there may be a little bit more flexibility and understanding at the local level in terms of what comes forth out of Ben's process.
One thing that I think, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, one thing I think that's important to note, though, is that the UGB isn't a silver bullet. And so as we look at the UGB, that isn't going to solve affordable housing. That isn't going to, so it's a means to an end, but I think we have policies and different things we could be looking at as a city right now, and some of those are coming up. And but part of that also is that engagement with this body of getting involved in those discussions. Do we want accessory dwelling units on granny flats, what we used to call them, on your property? And my dear friend Bruce Abernathy once told me, he said, okay, so you have the NIMBYs not in my backyard, but do you know of the notes? Not over there either. And so it's kind of, what do we want as a community, and how do we want to, what's our value system? And yes, we acknowledge that we have these issues, but how far are we willing to go to solve the problem?
And I just, if I could build off of that really quickly, back to Don, is that we could expand the UGB, but that doesn't bring more land online. It's the infrastructure. And there's a lot of vacant land inside our current UGB that just needs some infrastructure. We need sewer, water, roads. So I want to make sure that folks understand too, it's not just about available land supply. Doesn't just come with a line on a map. It comes with having an investment in infrastructure for that to occur.
Well, you just stole part of what I was going to say. But I think one of the things that we're doing a little bit different this time, is to Eric's credit, is I think he's expanded the tent.
No, in fact.
Tess.
In fact, you can go ahead and turn them off. We're just going to do the mics down. Yeah.
But one of the things I think to Eric's credit and others with the cities, that they've expanded the tent this go around. And early on, they asked for the school district and the park district to help be a part of the process, rather than waiting towards the end and bringing us in. I know that they've done that with a lot of others as well. Because part of what we're doing is not just creating more lands for residential and more lands for industrial. property development, but we're also talking about what direction do we want to expand the infrastructure of this community. And so all of us need to be working together in determining what that infrastructure is going to look like, where can it be expanded for the least amount of money, and working together towards that end. So I'm optimistic this time that we will have a successful outcome to the UGB process.
I'm not going to let you off on the affordable housing thing quite that easy. So if ideas have to start somewhere, what are the ideas, the sort of specific ideas and measures that as we are in a policy process, what are the ideas that you all would at least like to see on the table to consider by the public through a public process to get at this question? Any ideas that you think we ought to have on the table?
Sure, I think the bulletin side would make an excellent I will let Eric talk about your committee at the city event, but I think just in the last 2 weeks, it's a great conversation has already started, and many partners. We have Tom Kemper in the room. We have many partners. I think it's advocacy. I think it's making sure from a state housing perspective that we are receiving funds from Oregon Housing and Community Services. This isn't a government problem. This is a community issue. And so there won't be one simple answer. It's going to be a combination of many, but part of that will be through some of the affordable housing money that is available, through some of the state funding that's available. There's some federal funds that get available, but we have veterans coming back. What does that mean? We have a university coming online. What does that mean? We're working to engage businesses and bring in 600 jobs. Okay, well, where are they going to live? I mean, it's across the board. It isn't just affordable housing, and it isn't just government that's going to solve it. But we recently had a meeting where we had economic development, so we had EDCO there, we had the Builders Association, the Realtors Association, we had City of Bend, we had some of our partners, we had Neighbor Impact, we had Housing Works, we had just a group workforce. Everybody around the table talking about, hey, what are you doing and what are you doing and how do we work collectively? And quite frankly, that's coordinating that conversation toward a solution is the only way that great things have been done. In our region, this is a regional issue, so addressing it in that fashion from my perspective was really the means to the end. So Eric, if you wanted to chat about your...
Sure. The city has an affordable housing committee that we established a few years ago when the affordable housing fee was enacted. So there's a percentage of, if you're pulling a building permit in Bend, a percentage of that goes into a fund that then we grant out competitively to folks creating a variety of affordable housing options. So there's an infrastructure in place to really look at this issue. So we're tasking them over the summer to come up with some policies and ultimately provide some recommendations to City Council. Some of those, we need some short-term relief right now. Some of that could come in the form of some policies to incentivize affordable housing. As mentioned, the accessory dwelling units. There could be some other kind of infill development strategies.
Eric, you know what it is? When you hold it right in the middle, you're covering your receiver. So hold it in the middle. Higher. In the middle. Hold it in the middle.
Right here. Okay.
Middle.
Right. There we go. Okay. Sorry, a little challenge.
No, hey, we're all just rolling with it.
Little mic
right?
challenge. So I expect some things to really surface here over the next couple of months. In fact, I know there's some folks in our affordable housing committee that are in the audience, so I'd be really curious as to, I think there was just a discussion yesterday about what are some ideas for us to surface. There's some things that the city can do in terms of providing some land. We have some leftover pieces of land that we acquired that we could get out there for a reasonable price to incentivize the supply chain. That's kind of our issue in Bend, is we just don't have a big supply chain of affordable housing. Our vacancy rates are less than 1%. So we're in a crisis mode, and we've got to put all our heads together. And I agree with Tammy, it's not just a government problem, it's a community issue. So we're one piece of that, but I don't want to pretend that we've got all the answers.
So one of the things that came up, I was at that meeting as well. One of the things that I observed kind of surprised me, and you're looking for lots of incentives as well. When you're looking at your builders trying to provide what's considered affordable housing, boy, that doesn't make dollars and cents very easily. and yet it makes community, and they understand that. There needs to be other kinds, and I know you're working on those, Eric. But Dawn, I'm just gonna go ahead and ask it. One of the things that came up it was my observation, but I guess the Parks District has been asked over and over whether or not they would provide deferrals to help incentivize this a bit, and they have denied that. And I'm sure there must be justified cause, right? There must be a reason for that. And I just want to understand it, because I know that you really look at investing in the community, but we're wondering in that capacity up here, how does that invest to the community? I'm just looking for the answer. So.
Well, we've never been asked for deferrals in terms of affordable housing. But the reason why we haven't, or our board hasn't agreed to deferrals in general, is because on a default, we're last in line. And if they ever did default on those, we would never receive those SDC dollars that we need to be able to develop the park system. So, you know, we don't have the power of not issuing a building permit or some of the other powers that other agencies have to make sure that they do receive those SDCs. And so at this point, our board has said, you know, it's wiser for us not to do a deferral program.
Thank you. You know, you sit there and you're trying to put it together as a large tax base and think, okay, how does this work? How does everybody investing? So I appreciate you letting me roundtable with you a little bit. So we're kind of coming to the component where we want to get out to the audience, and maybe people are getting edgy. Any final thoughts before we move forward into that area about things that you've worked hard on in your own conversations and in your own areas of managing growth, taxes, and key community opportunities? From you guys, anything? Tammy, you want a mic?
Well, you know, in the past, the Chamber has been a champion for getting collaborative efforts moving forward, and I just wanted to say to this body that I'm in my 7th year. Your local electeds and your local districts and government are working really, really well together. And I think it's because of the open dialogue and the conversations that are ongoing all the time. We don't wait for a problem to come together. And I would just say that I think it's more open and a better dialogue than it had been in the past. And so I wanted to offer that encouragement to the Chamber folks that it's working.
Well, thank you. We agree. It's all about a community effort here. Definitely the culture is rising. Ron?
Yeah, I also, you know, there's been times in the past when we needed to be moving forward with building schools, and the city wasn't always our friend in that process, and I certainly want to commend their efforts in terms of their departments working with us in terms of trying to move quickly to get these 2 schools that are underway built on time. And I think that's a real tribute to what Tammy's saying. It's working a whole lot better than it has sometimes in the past. And then, of course, our work closely with Dawn's in terms of sharing of facilities, in terms of being able to recognize that we both serve our community and need to find ways to partner for that is really important.
You bring up a good point. You guys all wrote down, one of the reasons this also came together is I began to observe, as many people do, the honor of seeing how you guys collaborate in the new ways that are on deck that you've arisen. Real quickly before we go out to the audience, you named one, Ron, how you guys collaborate. I've been in the gym when the Parks and Rec has had basketball going on for the kids. Thank you very much for the partnership. What are some other quick partnerships? Show them the ways, tell them the ways in which you are collaborating and getting some things done together, making good use of their dollars and time.
I think many of the ways that we collaborate aren't often visible to the community. There's hundreds of little ways that we collaborate very frequently. Pick up on what Ron said, you know, just this week the commencements are going on for all the high schools. We make the fairgrounds available for free for the high schools for those events. The cafeteria inspections that we do through our public health department and school cafeterias. You know, just a lot of little ways for the city. We do mutual aid across the board that, you know, whether we have an agreement or not, whether it's just picking up the phone and, you know, talking to a colleague about, you know, hey, what do you think of this? Or you know, have you faced this before and what did you do? So I think, yes, we have some formal agreements with our community development, building services, with our public works for equipment sharing, staff sharing. But beyond that, I think in virtually all departments, they know each other and they see each other and they ask questions. So I think, you know, whether it's problem solving or looking to the future, that kind of stuff goes on a lot more than, you know, what people might think.
And I would just I think we'd be remiss to not mention the ultimate collaboration that just occurred in protecting our community. And so Bend Fire, Bend Police, Search and Rescue, Sheriff's Office, both of our road departments, even the school district, it was where can we put a fire camp, where can we stage, where can we incident command, on and on. And just to see, you never know exactly how that'll work until you actually play it out, and quite frankly, it played out well. So there could be a sense of pride in who's on first and who gets to be in command. And the way that operated was a way of everybody offered humility, came into the room and figured it out. And I would just say kudos to the group, because that's the ultimate collaboration, because government's job is to protect communities, and it worked.
You played right into that.
Oh,
We were going to bring up two goals
Yay.
immediately as the big collaboration. Thank you.
I called out the city for their help and work in terms of our planning, but I need to recognize the county as well, because one of our properties was adjacent to UGB, and we needed to work through the county, and they were certainly there too, so thanks, Tom.
Yeah. And just a quick shout out to the collaboration back to your UGB. Eric, you guys have been very open to receiving the experience of Nick Lilac coming on board and working together with the city to get that process going. So huge shout out to
Yeah, and I mean, I think Nick was there in Redmond, and so we saw Redmond as an example to follow and how they set up their process. And we pulled Nick in and said, what do you think? How should we do this? And that sort of level of collaboration definitely is apparent. I would just echo that. Every day, whether it's through parks and their work and leadership with Muir Pond and helping to solve that issue, or it's with the schools and kind of helping to manage growth. I mean, it's just every day. It's just how we kind of live and breathe. It's not a formal thing, which is where you want it to be.
One of the things that we work so well on are some of the things that even us at this table are unaware of. And I think with the fire that happened this last week, it really shows how committed and dedicated that our staffs are, because it didn't take Eric or Tom or Ron or I to tell our staff to pull together to work with one another to help out. It just happened. And so I think, we have an empowered workforce, that knows how to get these things done, and when we need each other, we're always there to help. Ron already mentioned the partnership that we have with the school district, but there are a lot of programs we could not offer this community if it wasn't for the park district. We use 11 schools after hours for our after-school program, and without that, all those kids would be latchkey kids and going home, many of them going home without supervision. And so understanding that we serve the same population and being able to work together to be able to serve those is really invaluable. And I think a lot of the people in the community just really don't realize some of those things that we are doing in order to meet those needs.
Fantastic. This is an amazing roundtable, a great way to kick it out to the audience. How about a big round of applause to these folks? We want to talk with you. So David's ready to go.
Questions from the audience?
All right, don't be shy. Gwen Weissling, Bethlehem Inn, come on up to us. Thank you. Gwen Weissling with Bethlehem Inn, and we've talked a lot about the issue of affordable housing, and one of the side effects is homelessness. And Jim and Eric, I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about the vision and the commitment that the city of Bend has in dealing with the issue of homelessness.
Yeah, and I might ask you another question back before I address that, Gwen. What is the number, because you're operating a homeless shelter, the only, one of the only homeless shelters in the region, what is the #1 cause of homelessness right now?
Right now is affordable housing.
Yeah.
We have over 90 people. We are the only shelter that is open for women and families on an emergency basis, and we're serving over 90 people a night right now.
And I think that, and I kind of knew the answers to that, but I wanted to make sure it got out there, because homelessness or affordable housing there's a whole continuum, and I think having that emergency shelter and understanding why that need is there is something that I know I'm very dedicated to having that safety net there. So we provided some funding for that acquisition, and that's another partnership with the city and the county in acquiring that property for Bethlehem Inn, and we need to continue to support that. But beyond that, we need to get at those root causes of affordable housing. Why? It's not just about providing the supply, but it's also an opportunity to bring all those partner agencies together. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention there's a council that has been formed Bruce Abernathy's back there, the Homeless Leadership Council. That's really that's an effort to I think we should really plug into more to surface some of those solutions, because some of the things that the city can do is more from the zoning, development code, those types of things. That's one piece, but it needs to be bigger than that.
Got another question at the back, or Jim, did you want to respond?
I wish I had better ideas on that one. It's a chronic problem, of course, and it gets worse as the city gets bigger. It is something we have to take care of here, and I think the city is really willing to be a good partner on these things, but we have to depend also on community organizations to be at the kind of forefront of the day-to-day kind of problems that are associated with it. So we're very much aware of the problem and trying to do our part. I see it as a little bit intractable overall, and something that we all have to continue to pay attention to.
All right, thank you. We'll make sure we all have the mic up too, so we can hear. Wes, you have a question? Wes Price?
I do have a question. Actually, it's more of a comment first. Thank you very much for the collaboration and the cooperation that you're showing. As a long-term citizen of this community, it hasn't always been that way, and it's great to see. With that said, though, these 4 pie charts that have been going by, the 4 entities represented here represent roughly $750 million, or $750 million of resources, of our resources. And you've talked about some of the soft things that you're doing to cooperate and do interagency things. But do you have anything on the agenda that is real cost savings to eliminate redundancies and overlaps and that kind of stuff that actually costs us money?
Well, one thing I think is just managing personnel costs. That has been a real focus for the city, and I'll get to that. I know all of us have been, I think, pretty united on the PERS front of how to send a common message that there needs to be a solution to that system, and we've worked together on that. There's the cost, or the was alluded to earlier. We have a shared services agreement with the county, for example, where we share our public works folks, and we, both in terms of our equipment and folks that are operating that equipment, because it doesn't make sense for the county to have a Vector truck. They don't have a sewer system, but they have drains that need to be cleaned, so we can get out there and do that type of work. They do all of our chip sealing work. We do one contract when we pave. That's inside the city and outside the city. I think we're moving more and more in that direction with our in maintaining our infrastructure. That's one example. And I think kind of with economic development, we've, that work through EDCO too, where we kind of all work at a regional level. We work at a regional level with transportation, with water. I would love, because Wes is an accountant, and so he will give me some numbers, and I don't have those right in front of me, but I know we need to do a better job of articulating that bottom line, because there is a bottom line story to tell. I couldn't give you that exact number right now.
Got a very large one to add to that. Currently led by our sheriff's office, and I see Captain Utter is here, is our emergency communication systems in our county that is currently in the scoping phase. We need to replace our communication systems. I'm talking about field communications between agencies to 911 and so forth, and that's a very large, big ticket project, and each of the agencies have been working together with a consultant to come up with what that might look like and how much it might cost. There are, some historical differences in the way law enforcement and fire agencies have talked to each other in the past. And being able to look at how those differences might be overcome in a single system that reaches out to both is a massive potential to save money for both. And they're not stopping there. The consultant is looking at including other agencies in that communication systems like public works, hospitals, schools potentially, to come up with a single system that uses some common technology to save all our agencies a great deal of money going into the future.
Do you have more comments? comment.
One of the things, I guess, my theme is going to be partnerships, and one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to work a lot more with user groups to help bring money to the table when we're building some of these new facilities. And some examples of that is we have a partnership right now with Oregon Rush, and Oregon Rush is bringing $2.5 million to build soccer fields out at Pine Nursery. We have a partnership on the Safe Passage Channel in the Whitewater Play area with the Paddle Trail Alliance, where they are raising $900,000 for that. We had a partnership with Pickleball Club, who brought $100,000 to the table, and skateboarders who brought $40,000 to build a new skate park. And so a lot of the developing these partnerships are allowing us to use other funding opportunities where the users themselves are helping to pay for the development of some of these facilities. And so that in itself, I think, is at least saving us on some of the capital costs that we have in our budget.
Wes, I appreciate the comment, or the question rather, and two things that I would add. Of course, PERS, and of course what we're doing on the radio system, but I think part of it is also that leadership in your electeds. So from a Board of County Commissioners perspective, we verify that one of our goals, we go through a goal setting process every year. You as a county department have to be able to show that your actual cost of service is less than the private sector providing that service. And if you are, then in fact we bring that service on. And if you're not, then in fact we push that out to our local folks. And our road department is a prime example of how that's happening. But the other thing is that we have a policy that we no longer, a lot of the funding that we receive from the county, for our county would be for health and mental health services. Those are usually grant funded positions. And those typically turn into full-time positions that stay on, and we all know how sometimes that can add to the roll-ups and individuals. But a grant-funded position at Deschutes County is a grant-funded position for the life of the grant. And so instead of having the, and some will say maybe that's not the way we should be looking at it, but quite frankly, I think it's helped us ride out the recession, where the services are no longer needed and the position actually is no longer funded through that grant. Then that position in fact goes away. Now, of course, we look for that person to find another position within the county, but instead of that being just an automatic FTE that we have added. So it's just those fundamental pieces, I think, from a leadership perspective of your elected officials, I would be watching for that as well.
Just a couple of quick comments, and probably there's other questions, but there's just a couple things that, first of all, from my perspective, it starts with relationships and communications, and that's, I think, the piece that we probably have made the greatest progress in the last decade on, is just the fact we do talk to each other quite a lot. The second piece, though, is just in the educational frame, we've done more and more looking at regional efforts, and Bruce Abernathy, among his 15 or 20 hats he wears, one of them is that he actually works for us, and he's our grant writer, and he's been the lead in terms of writing grants for our region, and we feel like that's a contribution that we can give to the region in terms of providing that resource, so that we're being able to bring in literally millions of dollars in terms of grants to support education and support educational advancement in the region. So that's just one other place.
Questions? What feels like what are the 2 or 3 things you could mention? What will we be asking of the congressional delegation and the state legislature in the next 12 months? Anything coming to mind?
Anybody out here want to comment?
Legislators are a terrible thing to waste. They're there, and we need to ask them for things.
Well, I would start with, quite frankly, as many of you have read, we've had an issue with FEMA and Oregon Emergency Management in trying to clear the logjam on some of our grant funding to protect our community through creating defensible space and Project Wildfire. So we'll be continuing that challenge, making sure that we have those grants available. But it is frustrating from a local government perspective, the lack of understanding of what it means to actually do that work on the ground. We were actually disincentivized to do sweat equity. We actually cleared too much land, and so we were asked to pay back because we were more efficient than they had actually allowed us to be. And so it's that sort of thing that for us, it'll be making sure that we have funds available to continue to protect our communities from a federal congressional piece. But quite frankly, the issue isn't just the fuels management, it's the ability to do appropriate forest management practices. And that leads to funding, not only that leads to jobs, it also leads to funding for our schools and for our counties and et cetera. So that from a federal perspective is pretty darn high. I think we also, I know that Senator Knope has been working on The fact that we have to put solar on every public building that we do, it's 1.5%, and quite frankly, if it's solar or it's solar or it's solar, how about biomass? How about some of these other opportunities and using our natural resources around us? Again, we kind of get the, why would you want to do that? Because solar's awesome. Well, sure, but it actually, your return on that investment outlives the lifespan of the solar panels, so it doesn't. Anyway, what do I know? But, so we'll be asking those questions and keeping them engaged. Those are a couple that come to mind.
Tax reform, I think, is something that we're going to be watching really closely. I alluded to it in the video, that $2.80 per 1,000 property tax assessed value is not really working for the city of Bend. There was those measures, property tax measures in the 90s. I'm not saying everyone needs to raise their taxes. I'm just saying I don't know if it's the best system to provide for the kind of growth that we have here and what our general tax. We need to just have a serious discussion about what our general tax base should pay for. We're starting to have that with like planning fees, for example. There was a pretty robust discussion with council about what does growth pay for, what does the general tax base pay for. That's a hard discussion to have if the one side of the equation is restricted to the degree that it is. So that's something that we're going to be watching really closely over the next session. I know the governor's talked about tax reform, and there's some polling going on right now to see if that's at all viable.
One of the things that we're looking at on the federal level is the reauthorization of the transportation bill. And two programs within the transportation bill that are in jeopardy right now is the Recreation Trails program and the Safe Routes to Schools. And both of those programs are funded through the transportation bill. But getting reauthorization of this bill is going to be very difficult. And some of those smaller programs are in jeopardy of being cutting. I think whenever you have things like the OSU campus and new schools coming in, a lot of neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks where kids can get, have safe routes to schools, those programs are really important to local communities, and being able to bring those local dollars into these communities is really important.
We've got go ahead, Mark.
No, I was just going to say, obviously, PERS was a huge focus in the last session. We made progress. I'm not sure we got as far as we need to go, so I don't think there's necessarily a lot of will with the legislature this next round to do much more with it, but I think it's an area that we got to continue to stay focused on making sure that we have a balanced system there. And then in terms of education, we've had a pretty aggressive agenda in the last 4 or 5 years in terms of education in the state, and I think the real need we have now is to sort of stay the course and allow us to get that work done out in the school districts across the state. There's a lot of work in progress, and probably the thing that would just about kill us all is if we change course right now and said, oh, all that work we're not going to do anymore, we're going to go some other direction. So that's an important piece to us.
I would add just one more quick one. Land use is always a hot topic during legislative sessions, and locally, even without a legislative mandate, our community development department is currently looking at agricultural lands in our county, and what people's wants and desires and what they don't want, frankly, also on those. But at the state level, there's been different initiatives over the years looking at a little bit of regionalization, getting away from the one-size-fits-all that currently exists in the state land use system, and looking for a little bit more flexibility in areas such as ours that aren't the Willamette Valley, that don't have the fertile farmland that deserves to be protected over there. There was a pilot project that has gone on, is still going on, I believe, in southern Oregon and Jackson County, in that area, looking at some flexibilities down there. So that's something that we would like to see more of, and I'm sure we'll be working with our delegation to see if something's on the horizon in terms of some kind of a pilot or a further examination here locally, hopefully with some state money to go along with it to help us do that.
One last would be the healthcare reform. I think many in this room have been tracking that. And from a county perspective, of course, public health and mental health. And what we're seeing play out in our schools, is there a way that we can strengthen that system to make sure that we have access for all of our children to have, we used to have counselors in the schools in a way that we just are not able to invest in these days. That, quite frankly, I think we're seeing that play out in a way that we may be reaping what the lack of investment there is providing. So,
I would ask Tim Cano, would you care to put a finer point on the PERS discussion and how you see things evolving?
Right behind you, Tim.
You can answer no, I don't, by the way. That's an acceptable answer. Well, basically what happened last session is before the courts right now, and they say that they're going to decide by the end of the year, so we'll know whether or not what was done was legal in the court's eyes. But beyond that, Rana's right. We need to go further. That was a small piece. And when Ben Lapine is spending 30+% of payroll and other entities are doing the same thing, that's ultimately not sustainable. And so there's an appetite, at least for some legislators, to go back and say, we need to do more. You know, we need to get this policy right. And I think all of the citizens of Oregon deserve a resolution to this. And so I'm going to continue to work on the issue along with many of my colleagues. But a lot of that, of course, depends on what the makeup of the legislature looks like. And I'll be able to tell you that, I think, November 6th. How successful we'll be. Well put. Ruth.
Hi, Ruth Williamson. I'm with Ben 2030, and I am really encouraged hearing the conversation this morning. One, because I love the collegiality and the camaraderie that is up on the stage here amongst our governments, and I'm really encouraged also that we're rooting our aspirations in some real practical solutions and outcomes that are making a difference in Deschutes County. I tend to float though back up here at 100,000 feet, and I just want to mention a couple of things. One is that we do have a vision for Bend, and it's articulated in the Bend 2030 vision. It is not a prescriptive vision, but if you're looking for a template of community values, it's the best one we've got. And it's been well supported by the agencies here on the stage and a number of you in the audience. But if you want to get a finger on the pulse of what our citizens care about and what we should be paying attention to, there it is. And I would just offer that we have this amazing moment before us with some really heavy lifts. And there's always a temptation to look up to the city, to the school district, to the county, to the parks, and say, fix this, make this happen, take care of affordable housing, take care of our homeless, expand our programs, expand our reach. Government can't do it alone. And we've got this great audience here of community leaders, businesses, that expand the reach tenfold. What's happening and what's making a difference right now is alignment and paying attention to where we can create efficiency, to Wes's question. I think that's the opportunity, is where do these big initiatives overlap? How does the UGB conversation frame transportation, affordable housing, community as a whole? What is it that we want to contain within that boundary? And I'm going to just borrow a page from Amy's playbook because I'm such a fan of this Ben Broadband ad campaign, what we share. And if we each pay attention in our respective organizations to that bigger question of what we share, then I think the question comes back home to each of us. How is my business, what is my reach in terms of communicating that middle way? And when we articulate that to our citizens, we activate them, we create ownership, and then we can make these lifts happen together. So shout out to you guys for the work that you're leading. Shout out to you guys for being a part of this community. And I believe we're gonna rock it. When we get to 2030, we are gonna look back at this point in time and we're gonna say, wow, we got a whole lot done together. So there you go.
We have a question back here, unless there's another one. Real quickly, we have time for one more, but I want to give you a quick opportunity to respond to anything that Ruth put up on the table. Or is that it? Did she just pull us back to the point of inspiration?
Amen, sister.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you, Ruth. That's right. Go, Ruth. All right, quick question. Good colleague here. I think he also might be my boss, Tim Casey, President and CEO of Ben Chamber.
Thanks, Jamie. The one question that I had is the one that when folks ask me what keeps me up at night. It's how do we fund our community? So we've had the $98 million for the school district, $29 million for Parks and Rec. I know the city has a $30 million general obligation bond for transportation, and we just passed the fire levy. The county had the 911 service levy up. So each one of you have had kind of a hand towards the pocketbook. What's the next item that you want to fund? So there's 4 agencies up there. Obviously you guys talk about within your own agency, but I don't know if you do it collectively. What is the next bond, levy, or some form of funding that you're going to come to the voters for?
I'll start. I think the next bond levy ought to be an infrastructure bond for the city of Bend. And I think it ought to be a substantial bond. I think the $30 million bond that they passed was a Band-Aid, but they need to do something a lot more substantial, particularly for roads in this community.
Eric says here, here. From a school standpoint, we're dealing with constant growth. The way our funding works, capital improvement is the obligation of local communities through bonding, and our operations are funded through a formula set by the legislature in terms of level of funding, and so those things are kind of done for us in that respect. Obviously, with continued growth, we have some needs that will be coming up in terms of future bonds, in terms of capital improvements.
Well, from the county, I think the only one that really has crystallized for us is the need at some point to go back and ask the community to fund 911 on a permanent basis. We have a split levy now that's part permanent and part temporary, and that doesn't give us any certainty going into the future that your 911 service is going to be fully funded going forward. So at some point, and we have our work cut out for us in being able to demonstrate to the community that it is in fact a wise investment to provide that permanent long-term funding to ensure that you're going to be protected in terms of 911 and their work with the public safety agencies.
I would just say that 911 is a perfect example of collaboration and cost cutting, because each one of the organizations could have their own public safety, their own dispatch center, and so instead we have a regional 911. I just think put that in there.
Yeah, as was mentioned,